And now, without further ado, you ready, Woody? Let me introduce Woody Zuill.
Hi everybody, give me just a second to set up. Is this for me? You closed your screen already. How's everybody doing? My name is Woody Zuill. I started programming in 1982, before most of you were born. Is that true? Nah. But I started programming because I bought a computer to buy software and use that software. And what I found was that the software that I was able to buy was awful, and it didn't help me very much. So we got to get my presentation running. And I realized that maybe I needed to write the software that I was hoping to have. And you know, it looks to me like I added some blank bits here, so we're just going to have to put up with whatever happens. What would you like? Okay, is that showing? Excellent. And we have a clicker here somewhere. Ah, very good. So, and I decided that maybe I need to learn to program. And I went to one of my brothers. I had two brothers that were programming already at that time, had been for quite a while, and I asked them, do you think I could learn to program? And they said, any idiot can program. That meant, yeah, you can do it. So what I've decided was that since all this software that I already had wasn't working very well, I could write my own software, and hopefully that my own software would be no worse than what I was buying. And in so doing, I learned that I really loved doing software, writing software. I owned a different business that had nothing to do with software. So that's my background. Along the way, I'm going to share with you an idea of something that happened to us at a place I was working about 6 years ago. And we came to calling it mob programming. Has anybody here heard of mob programming? You've heard of this before this conference? About 10 or 12. You guys can go take a break. And the rest of you might want to listen to this. I don't know. I accidentally entered in some blank screens, so I'm going to skip right to here. I start every presentation I give with this slide, this information. I'm not here to tell you what to do or whether or not you should do something. I'm merely sharing with you one team's result of paying attention to how to work well together. And if you find it useful to you, fantastic. And if you don't, well, you might find something interesting in this talk. So what is mob programming? Mob programming is all the brilliant minds working together on the same thing, in the same space, at the same time. I got myself mixed up there. In the same space and at the same computer. So if you want to picture that, that's 5 or 6 or more people working at one computer. You got that in your mind. I'll show you a picture of what it looks like in a second. This is what we are thinking. We're going to bring together all the required skills and knowledge to do this work. Whatever it is we're doing, we're going to bring them all together. And they're going to work together and collaborate in real time in getting this work done, instead of separating them to get the work done. It looks like this from the front. You can see there's, I think, 7 people here. There's a developer or 2. There's a tester. 1 tester there at the time. There's a product owner. There's a database expert. We have everybody we need to work on this software. This is what they're looking at. There's screens that are large screens, similar to what we have here. And they're working together, talking about the work that they're doing and interacting with each other as they do this. Now, it's not 5 or 6 people watching one person coding. It's 5 or 6 people essentially programming and 1 person translating that into code. Or whatever we're working on. It may not be code. We could be writing a document together. We could be writing an email together. So it can also be done remotely. And the only reason I'm showing this is so you can see these people are in a remote session. Andrea at the top, she's the CEO of this company, Corgi Bites. She's in Richmond, Virginia in this particular moment. And Wendy at the bottom is in New York City. So they're working remotely. This can be done as a team remotely. Let's go on. This was originated at Hunter Industries. I put this in to honor them because they gave me the freedom to be able to work with a team without any interference. Let's see how good we can make things get. And they were willing to do that experiment. I honor them very highly for that. I do like to point out that in their byline, it says, built on innovation. So when they asked me to come to work for them, I said, do you take that seriously? Are we going to really be able to innovate? Or are we just going to have to do what we're told? And they said, no, you can innovate. So that's why I took the position. This is what it looks like there now. When we first started, there was that one team. I believe there are now 9 teams there. I quit working there 2 years ago because I was getting so many invitations to go out and speak about this. I still visit them every month or so and do workshops and stuff there. Here's another view of their work area, but I'm going to go through some pictures really quickly. We only have a short amount of time. I want to confuse you as much as I can in the limited amount of time that we have. But here's another view of them, but I'm going to look at a bunch of pictures of people all around the world that are doing mob programming. Here's some folks in Alaska. Alaska is a state in the United States. You may not know that. This is France. This is in the UK. This is in Hungary. This is GDS London, Government Digital Services in London. They've been on a very interesting Agile path for quite a while, and they're doing a lot of wonderful things with Agile. Another view of them. I want to point out in this picture how focused these 4 people are on the work they're doing. We're not required to have that deep focus all the time, but when we need it, everyone is there to bring it to the team. Teamwork is a skill that we bring to the team. Teamwork isn't something we get out of a team. Teamwork is a skill we can bring to the team. I can work well with a team. Here's a group in Boston at Zipcar. This is a group at Unruly in London. They've been doing this since 2014. I believe they have at least 6 or 7 teams working this way. Agile in Sweden. This is another group in London. This is in South Africa. Did you notice everybody above the equator, I'm going to show you, face in that direction, and everyone south of the equator faces in the opposite direction. There's some scientists here probably, you can explain to me later why this is. Notice here's in Prague, we're back facing the other way. Okay, the Netherlands, no, that's Denmark. Florida is another place in the US. Does everybody know who this is? Does nobody know who this is? Who is that? The woman. Admiral Grace Hopper. You don't know Admiral Grace Hopper? Interesting, I won't tell you anymore. Get your phones out, look her up. Please. They're mob programming. This is like about the year I was born. Notice they're all working together at a single computer, doing the same thing at the same time. They even have a scrum master up in the corner, making sure they're getting their work done. Another group in Greece. This is a group in Sweden. I want to show this. They just drew a couple desks together, put a couple keyboards on there. They're hooked into one computer that they look at just across the way, a nice large computer. Their scrum master had brought his home monitor just so they could have a big monitor to use. This is really nice. They have their work artifacts there. Everything's there for them to get their work done. Here's a team in Spain that was just trying it out. They need to get larger monitors. They're sitting too close. It's a little uncomfortable. Here's a team that took my advice. They got some big monitors. They don't even know I exist. You know where that is, right? What is this? This is NASA. But I want to point something out. These people are gathered together to work on the same thing at the same time, in the same space. They're not necessarily at the same computer, but they have a lot of artifacts that they're all looking at together. And they pitch in with their needed skills at just the right moment. We don't need to contribute every moment, just when it's the right moment. So I'm going to show you a video. Let's see how this works. Let's see if I can find how to get it. I haven't used a Windows machine in a long, long time. I can't even, there we go. I think I click on that. Does it make that smaller? It does. And then somehow we make this larger. I'm going to share this video. You can find this on YouTube. We made this in 2012. Is that showing up? Can we not see a video with this system? I'm going to act it out. We're okay. We won't look at it. We'll go on. We'll go on. Don't worry. I can show it to you later. You can look it up on YouTube. Don't worry. We'll skip it. We're going to skip it. I'll go back to my slides. No problem. Oh, we're not getting that either now. Excellent, thank you. You can find this on YouTube. You can look it up. If you just put, you have your phone, you can look it up. Everybody watch it right now. Just kidding. Okay, so I'm going to explain a couple things that you would have seen in this video. This is an 8-hour day with 5 or 6 people working at a single computer, and what you'll see is as these people move about, I guess I'm going to have to act out this part too. I'm not sure how to make this work. Everybody just wish really hard. Wish really hard. I can do this talk without the slides if we need to. So I'm going to ask you a question. Why would we work this way? Why would we work 5 or 6 people at a single computer? Somebody tell me, what might be good about that? Out loud, not just in your head. Out loud, yes. Real-time communication. Whenever something comes up, we can discuss it right then and there. We don't have to call a meeting. And the beautiful thing about that is we're all already in the same context. We're all in the same mental space, not just physical space. What's another advantage, possible advantage? Loudly. Can somebody transfer that up to me? We get different views on what we're doing. We can share different approaches. Now, some people will say, well, won't that bring you a lot of conflict? Well, it might, but what I want is lots of good ideas, not just one idea so we don't have conflict. What else? The quality goes up. In the 3.5 years I was there, once we started working this way, we had 3 bugs reported into production. In 3.5 years. The quality shot through the roof. We have everybody paying attention to the code and what we're working on. Quite interesting. What else? What else could be good about this? No, a very low inventory. When we talk about limited WIP, this is as limited as you can get, unless you do 0 things at a time. We're doing 1 thing at a time. So there's no inventory. Inventory is anything we've started on that we haven't yet delivered to use. That's inventory. It's waste until the moment somebody's using it. That's enough. There's lots of good reasons, and we recognized all of these things. There's always a very high learning going on. We were always learning a lot. We were sharing with each other. We were helping each other. This was part of it. Why would we work this way? Why would we put 5 people at 1 computer? This is the real reason. Because the team decided to. Those managers here, that's who this message is for. Why would we do this? Because the team decided to do this. Nobody told them to do this. We didn't tell them how to work. Now I was on this team, but nobody told us how to work. We had that freedom to discover for ourselves the best way to work. I'm going to try and share with you how we came upon that if we have enough time. I have a countdown counter here. If that's my amount of time, I'm going to use exactly that amount of time. So far we've covered a little bit of what it is and why we do it, and I want to share with you one technique we used in how to do it. Because it can be really confusing if there's 5 or 6 people working together and everybody's talking at the same time, we're not going to get much done. So we had a technique that we had used that came out of a coding dojo style that we had used previously to this in our studies. And it actually just transferred over into working together very, very well. This is basically how it works. I'm going to share with you a little bit of the story of how I got there. First of all, with pair programming, which I was first introduced to in 1998 or 99, I'd been a solo programmer for 15 years. I always worked alone. That's how everybody did it. But in 1999 or so, somebody mentioned this pair programming to me and said, I'd like to see what that's like. I don't have the idea. I never would say, well, that couldn't possibly work. What I want to do is, well, if you say it works, I want to see what it's like. Let's give it a try. So I was introduced to it, and essentially the idea was to be two people collaborating. I'm facing back to this picture. One person's a navigator. And if you picture a navigator as being the person who has the longer view, and the driver who has the shorter view. The driver just has to make sure we stay on the road, we don't run into someone else. They have to be very focused on the immediate, but the navigator's looking a little bit further down the road. We're going to turn off in 2 miles. Don't have to say anything more than that. When we get near 2 miles, then we say it's the next turn off. You have highways here, right? You get, in 2 miles we turn off. Okay. Some places I've been, they don't. You know. There you have the camels here. Okay. Yes. Everybody is. I have found wherever I go, things are slightly different than what I'm used to. So please forgive me if I get things wrong. What I've noticed is, though, with the driver-navigator way of pairing, it almost immediately turns into what I would call driver-observer. The person at the keyboard's doing the work, and the other person is just watching them work. How productive is that? Not particularly. So, but I did a lot of pair programming that way. It just seemed to be the way people were doing it. Until 2009, I had been working with a friend of mine, Llewellyn Falco, and we were going to work on some open source code. We were working on a little project that he wanted to add some functionality to, and he understood what he wanted to do. So I got together with him and we sat down. Well, before I say that, I want to share this one idea. With this model of working, the driver-observer, when somebody gets an idea, they take the keyboard and say, I know what to do, and they start typing it in. That's very different than what the driver-navigator should be. So with the driver-navigator, the way Llewellyn did, this is sort of the way, I'll act it out for a minute. The way that we worked, Llewellyn and I sitting together at the computer, and he says, okay, what we're going to do is we're going to take this code, we're going to create an interface of it, and we're going to extract out some of the methods and implement a new class implementing that interface. And then I'm going to write the new functionality in another new class, and we're going to use a dependency injection to be able to use this new functionality, so the person who's doing this work can choose, who's using this code can choose which one they want to use in real time and dynamically for testing, this testing thing. Okay, well, I understood all that, and I said, well, let's do it. And he stood up, and he went to the whiteboard, and he says, okay, can you extract out the interface? And while you do that, I'm going to be drawing the next part we're going to do. So I could do that. I started extracting out the interface, and he kind of drew the idea of the new functionality. He was thinking about it. He'd walk over and watch me working. He'd say, okay, you're about ready to go. That looks right. Let's extract out another method into that interface, and then we'll start implementing the old features in that in a class that implements that interface. He kept navigating me. And it kind of dawned on me after a while, that's driver-navigator. I loved it. At the end of 2 or 3 hours, we had switched back and forth. Sometimes I would stand up and direct him, and sometimes he would stand up and direct me. But we were highly effective. After 2 or 3 hours, we went to take a walk and talk about things, and he explained to me how he came up with this idea, and I loved it. It turned into my preferred way of working, of doing pair programming. You can see what's happening is here. It keeps us both in the loop as to what's going on, because when you're just coding and someone else is trying to decipher it, that's very difficult to understand. But if somebody's expressing out loud what we're doing, and that person can keep thinking at the higher level while I'm thinking at the lower level, we move rather quickly, and it worked well for me. I hope you can see how that would be. Well, in mob programming, we just do the same thing. Oh, there's a rule. The rule is, for an idea to go from someone's head into the computer, it must go through someone else's hands. Now, if I want to make this interactive, I'd make you all do that. Go. For an idea to go from someone's head into the computer, it must go through someone else's hands. This was a very important thing to me. It changed the way I thought about coding. With mob programming as a group, we do exactly the same thing. We have one driver, but now we have 5 or 6 navigators. And you would think that could become quite confusing. So we just had a very simple rule, and that is only one person's allowed to talk at a time. We had been practicing listening with each other, and if we had time, I'd do some exercises with that, but we'd been practicing listening to each other before we ever landed on this way of working. It was by accident that we started working this way. As a matter of fact, We had taken on some work that was very difficult for the team. One of the team members had taken on some stuff, and they weren't making good progress, and he asked if we could join everybody together in a room to just look at these problems he was trying to solve. And as we looked at them, we started working on them. And as we started working on them, we all realized, this is really productive. Let's do this more. But let's go on just for another second. I'm going to share with you this. How many of you here let's see a show of hands, use a keyboard in your work? Does anybody here? Oh, you have? Good. Almost everybody. Why? Why? Why do you use a keyboard?
Write code.
Why do you use a keyboard to write code?
They told you.
Why do you, because you don't have a good speech to code converter? Because we work alone, but why do we use a keyboard? Because it works well? Okay, what if I were to be talking to you like this? DRIVERS/NAV. You would say, get that idiot off the stage. Why did you bring, Danko, why did you bring this idiot to Israel to talk about this one letter at a time? But that's how we talk with our computers. Why do we do that? We do that because it's sort of the best thing we've found yet, maybe. With mob programming, we have this idea of the driver. I hope you can see where I'm going with this. The driver, this is how drivers look in California. We all have like pink hair. The driver is a smart input device. The keyboard's a dumb input device. How would you want to interact with the keyboard or with the computer if you weren't bound by needing to use a keyboard? What would you want to be able to do? Talk to it. What about just think your ideas? Have you ever seen The Matrix? They made a movie called The Matrix. Just hook that thing up the back of my head, and then I just think it. You see, what we did was we replaced the keyboard with a smart input device. The person at the keyboard is part of the computer, not part of the programmer. The rest of the team is the programmer. And we would switch out our programmer, or our keyboarder, our coder, every 4, 5, 6 minutes. It basically goes like this. We have the navigators, and everybody's a navigator. You wouldn't be there if you didn't have knowledge that was needed by this team to do this work. We've gathered everyone together to eliminate the waste of waiting for answers to the questions that we have. In our work, that's one of the biggest wastes in software development, waiting to get an answer from a product owner about how is this thing supposed to work, or from our team lead about what is technically what are we supposed to do with this. We would use the rotation. Now this is just the way we did it. You can do it any way you want. The way that we did it was to use a rotation where we had a timer. And we would switch out every few minutes. When I made this slide, it was every 7 to 10 minutes. We've done it as short as 4 minutes, even less, and as many as every 15, 20 minutes. I'm going to show this as an animation. Notice that somebody is starting to say, well, let's try this. And somebody else says, well, we're going to need to write a test for that. Whoops, let's go back. One more, let's try this. Let's write a test. Somebody at the same time is thinking about what are we going to need to do? Well, let's create a customer object. Somebody's thinking about how are we going to get the data for that? How are we going to whatever it is? We're all thinking and doing together at the same time. So that's the basic idea, and then we just start over. We just start over at the end of, when we get through the 5 or 6 people that are there, we just start over. It's this continual rotation. Now, you don't need to do it that exact way. That's the way we did it, and I'm sharing with you what we did. A couple other things I want to share about. This is a question that is almost always asked when I share this. How can you possibly be productive with 5 or 6 people sitting at one computer? And at first, my answer was, I don't know. Does that matter? Does it matter how we're more productive, or does it matter that we are more productive? What we had noticed was that when we worked separately and gathered our work together, we got a certain amount of work done. And when we worked together, we got a whole lot more work done. How did we figure that out? We figured that out. I took this picture to make this slide. You see all those cards there? I just took we have a bucket where when we're done with the work item, we put it in the bucket. Because somebody higher up had said, well, you need a record of what you've done. We said, well, that's the code. Well, we need it in writing too. Okay, there we got a bucket of stuff that's written on. So we could take those things out of the bucket, put them on the tabletop. I took a picture, and our QA person, Aaron, who's sitting at this far end over here, he said, hey, did you notice? Every date on there is either the 13th, let's see, the 17th or the 18th of April. I think that's the month. Well, that's how much work we got done in 2 days. So let's go back in our records, but before we start working this way, and how much work would we get done in 2 days back then? And it looked like that. So that's how we knew how productive this was. But productivity is not important. Effectiveness is important. Are we working on the right thing? Not are we getting more work done. Getting more work done is meaningless if we're not working on the right thing. Okay. What I've come to understand, I believe this has something to do with flow. I'm not going to have time to cover this completely for you. I'm just going to give you a little bit of a thinking about it. There's several kinds of flow. One is the psychological flow of Ajimeh, who says basically that you can get in a state with an activity that you're so focused on what you're doing that nothing else seems to matter. Has that ever happened to anybody here? Not at all. Okay. Well, it happens to me all the time. I would be working, let's say I get home from work before I was doing programming for a living, and I wanted to start programming. And my wife had come, she's an artist, she's done all the artwork that's in my slides. She's a children's book illustrator. Please buy her books. It's the only reason I'm traveling around the world. She just had a book come out yesterday, and she's having a release party on Saturday in San Diego, and you're all invited. You could come if you wanted to. I'm sure you could get a flight. Here's the thing. When we get in that deep flow, you are not paying attention to things around us. So my wife's sitting there doing her artwork. I'm sitting there doing my computer stuff. And she says, hey, I want to eat something. I'm going to go make dinner. I say, that's great. And I keep programming away. And then in a minute or so, she'll come in and say, it's going to be about 15 minutes. I say, excellent. So I keep working away. And then she comes in and say, it's time for dinner. I say, great. And I just keep programming away. Then in a while, she comes and says, it's time to go upstairs and go to bed. I say, great, I'll be right up there. And then a little bit later, she comes downstairs and says, time to go to work. All night long I had worked. But I didn't eat any dinner. I didn't go to bed. I was so focused on what I was doing. This is what he's talking about, this state of flow. We get in this deep concentration that allows us to work with an effortlessness and an ease. Now, teams can get this as well. That's why we'll see a jazz band playing music. They're all in flow together. Each of them is in their own flow, but as a team, they're in flow. I hope you can see what I'm talking about. Here's the thing. There's another kind of flow. That's the flow as we talk about it in lean manufacturing. In lean manufacturing, this is basically a very simplified idea. We want to see the complete production of an item from start to finish with as little work in process as possible. It's that simple. No waiting, no inventory, nothing stopping us from going from beginning to end directly. And we can do this with software development as well. And that's what I believe mob programming is about. We're optimizing for the flow of the work rather than for the output of each individual. If we add up the output of each individual, what we found we were getting was a small amount of actual stuff, good stuff getting done. When we maximized the flow of the work, all of a sudden a lot more stuff was getting done. There's lots of reasons for that. We don't have time today to do that. And I promised I'd be done on time, but actually my clock tells me I still have 3 minutes left. Is that correct? Danko's sitting there completely in his own world. Are we supposed to be done at this time? Oh, okay. So I have a little bit of a quick story I'll tell you. I think I can do it in 2.5 minutes of how this all started. Do you want to hear that? Okay. So I had been hired at a place because I have a reputation in my area for really understanding Agile and how to be successful with it. It's pretend nobody can actually do that, but great if they think I can do that. I like that. And so they had a lot of problems on this team. The main thing was their code wasn't very good, and they were very siloed in their work. When I decided to take the work on, all I'd asked for was the right to put the bigger, more troubling projects on the back burner. There were a few other things, and no interference for a year. Let's see what can happen. The first thing I noticed is they had a need to improve their technical qualities of their coding. I read their code, and their code, I would consider their code not good enough. But do you want to be the new boss who comes in the company and says, hey, I just read all your code, it's pretty bad. You know, you don't want to tell that to anybody. What I wanted to do was for them to recognize it on their own. Well, how are we going to do that? Well, a few other things. I knew we needed to figure out how to work well together. Working well together solves lots of problems. Another important thing to me is that the people doing the work can best figure out how to do that work. You just need to give them the freedom to do that instead of telling them how to do it. Another important thing is that we study together. When we study together, we learn to help each other without the pressure of work. So we need to have study time during work. We set aside 3 hours per week to do that. And we would use a coding dojo style, where one person would be standing, navigating, another person would be sitting at the keyboard, and 4 or 5 other people would be observing. The main rule was the observers are not allowed to talk. Only the navigator can talk. And the driver's listening and coding in whatever the navigator is asking them to do. We were focusing on getting good results from our retrospectives. And one thing I learned a long time ago, don't wait 2 weeks to do a retrospective. Do a retrospective at the end of every day. And rather than ask, what are the problems that we need to fix? Ask, what went good? And let's turn up the good. This is what led us to doing mob programming. One day, we needed to resurrect one of those problem projects. And the people who had worked on it before came to me and say, we want to take a look. And I said, please do. In about an hour, they came back and they told me, this code is really problematic. So we gathered everyone together in a meeting, and we started working on it together, by accident. At the end of this time, these little things had led to us to recognize that working together was effective for us. At the end of that day, we decided the next day to work the whole next day together. And at the end of that day, we decided to work the next day, the whole day together. From that moment on, we worked as a team. All day long, every day, as a mob programming team. Thank you very much.